Welcome to the April edition of Core Connection. I'm your host, Patrick Bloodgood. And in this episode, we have some fish tales, some answers as to why we renourish beaches, as well as what event caused the Pittsburgh District to construct a series of flood control measures, and how a class of Texas fifth graders helped USACE bring an online game back to life. All that coming up in this edition of Core Connection. As the need to reduce the risk for damaging floods to communities across the nation increased, dams were built to be able to hold back and release water in a more controlled way. However, these structures created a barrier for fish that migrate up and down the waterways. In order to mitigate for these impacts, USACE has developed multiple means to get the fish to and from their natural spawning grounds, including fish lifts, like the one at St. Stephen's Dam in Berkeley County, South Carolina.
Behind me here you can see the fish lift. So we have hundreds of thousands of shad and herring that come through here every spring to migrate to their spawning grounds that are upstream of the dam here. And we pass those through the fish lift. Those fish form the basis of the food chain. They're very important to a lot of our sports fish, some of our ocean going fish, things like that. So it's important that we are able to operate this facility and move those fish upstream so they can spawn and maintain their populations. So the fish enter through the entrance chamber, which you can see behind me there, behind the concrete wall. Once the fish go in there, they enter the crowder chamber, and there's a big set of gates that push them up to the wall of the dam. And so in the dam, there's a small gate, and all the fish get funneled into that gate. Once they're there, it closes behind them, and we flood the actual lift chamber that lifts the fish up to the lake water level. There's a little basket that comes up underneath the fish, keeps them moving up the water column. And then when they reach the gate at the top, it opens, they swim back out to lake level. We funnel them through our camera so we can count them with our partner DNR. They do the counting of the fish, and then the fish go out into the lake to continue on with their journey to their spawning grounds.
In addition to structures that help fish get from point A to point B, USACE works with many local, state, and tribal partners to raise and stock fish in vital areas, keeping the ecosystem in balance. The Dworshak National Fish Hatchery in the state of Washington is one such facility that plays an important role in maintaining a proper number of native fish in the food chain.
The hatchery is owned by the Corps of Engineers. It was constructed in the late 60s to mitigate for the construction and operation of Dworshak Dam.
We raise millions of fish. We are one of the largest steelhead facilities in the United States. Eggs are taken typically for steelhead in January through April, and those eggs are raised and reared here until about one solid year. We manipulate those eggs with temperature, so the ones in April get just as big as the ones in January. Temperature is how fast or how slow your fish are going to grow. If it's cold, they grow slow. If it's warm, it grows fast. And so we do a lot of manipulation here to make sure we get the full life cycle, replicates as best we can nature, and get the fish out when they're supposed to leave. In the end of March, middle of April, when the rivers start getting high and would blow the natural production out to the ocean. The hatchery is managed between U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Nez Perce tribe. We raise together all the fish here. Everything is teamwork. Our goal is about 50-50 management at this point. Right now we have a little bit more on the Nez Perce tribe side.
We started this morning with the last pond of fish we trucked up the river to Red House. And then after that we started doing the direct release here with the rest of the steelhead. Just go straight into the clear water right here.
We are kind of the phase one of release for us. We raise about 2.1 million steelhead. 900,000 of those are trucked off site. A couple 100,000 typically go to Lolo Creek. 300,000 go to Clear Creek, and then another 400,000 go to Red House, which is just a relief site on the South Fork of the Clearwater River.
We work as a team to raise about 2.1 million steelhead. They get divided up into various sites. We also raise 1.65 million Chinook that get released here. We also transfer out another 400,000 Chinook to the Nez Perce tribe. And we also raise coho here as part of a coho Nez Perce tribe coho restoration project. From the Nez Perce tribe perspective, this is Nez Perce tribal land. This is a traditional fishing area. This area has been occupied by Nez Perce for thousands of years. The Nez Perce operate at hatchery upriver at Kuski, downriver at Nez Perce Tribal Hatchery, and have a strong presence here. And the salmon and the steelhead are very, very important to the culture of the Nez Perce people. And we're happy to be working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Corps of Engineers and all our other partners to make this a success story.
Looking at our nation's coastlines, one of the most asked questions USACE gets is why do we put sand back on the beach? To help answer this question, the Jacksonville District met up with some experts in Florida.
The beach was attractive for tourists, but also it served a very utilitarian purpose. So we're talking about a very rural Florida with no real road system, and so the beach itself served as a road.
So what that created is a lot of compaction. Now also the jetty has redistributed the sand, and the word is accretion.
It was a common boardwalk that ran all the way through north and south. And they lined up granite boulders the whole way down. So when I was growing up here as a child, you could stand up on the bulkhead and look down on the beach, and at high tide, the tide would come all the way up and slap the bulkhead. So that's what it was like. We had no beach at high tide.
A lot of people, when we nourish beaches, ask the question, why are you interfering with the beach, right? It can take care of itself. Beaches would be able to take care of themselves in many cases if other things had not already happened. The beaches that we are renourishing as part of our coastal storm risk management program were eroding before. And the reason that we build them is because maybe there was no beach there before, because erosion had occurred over decades and decades, and finally, maybe there was a seawall or rocks there and not really a beach. And so most of our projects are there because the beach doesn't sustain itself naturally. There are reasons for that. There can be natural reasons for beach erosion. There can also be man-made reasons for beach erosion. And so in a lot of cases, our projects are on beaches that would not naturally maintain themselves.
Coastline of Florida, it's complicated. It has shifted, eroded, grown over centuries.
And welcome to the Environment Subcommittee.
Congress gave the Army Corps of Engineers the authority for flood risk management. And part of that program is what's called the Coastal Storm Risk Management Program. And we have the authority that when there's a problem with coastal storm risk, we can come in and engineer solutions. We work with non-federal partners, usually a county or a city, and we evaluate the problems and then we engineer solutions.
It's important because beaches are our first line of defense in storm protection for everything that lies west of that. And they're also very important for environmental reasons and the economy of our county.
Well, when I think of resilient communities, I think of the flood risk program. We're trying to reduce the chance or the frequency of flooding. And so really what we do is we build projects that protect communities from storms. Now, there can still be damage with our projects, but it's much less frequent and it'll be much less severe. And then the beach itself and the resilience of the coastal system, many of our coastal storm risk management projects use beach nourishment. And when we add sand to a beach system, it becomes part of that natural system. And so that additional amount of sand helps that system be resilient after storm. In addition, if you want to think of environmental resilience, when we build projects and we maintain them through time, typically they regain a healthy ecosystem. So you'll have a dune and grass growing in the dune, and a lot of animals and plants live on the beach and in the dune. And so by restoring with natural materials like sand, we're able to restore the environmental resilience of the beach.
As far as the sea turtles go, there is a vast improvement, and we've increased our nesting as the dune system and the beach system develop and grow. It leaves more of an area for nesting sea turtles.
Over the decades, we are becoming more responsible and better stewards of the coastline. And it's a process, though. It's a process.
It's pretty rewarding, right? I mean, I've been a part of restoring beaches for the first time, seeing them go from very eroded, not really healthy beach systems, you know, where people have built seawalls, they put rocks in the water's right up against it, so there's no beach for turtles, there's no beach for any of the animals, there's no dune, and we come through, we add sand, and through time, the dunes grow, and all the plants come back in the dunes, you know, the animals come back to the whole ecosystem. You see turtle nesting on our beaches. So I think that it's pretty remarkable that we have an engineering solution that works perfectly with nature.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania sits at the confluence of two rivers, the Allegheny and Monongahela. These two rivers form the Ohio River. With these large river systems, the city and surrounding communities are prone to flooding. One event, though, put the wheels in motion for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to tame these rivers, lowering the risk to communities in the area.
Who knows the ways of water? There was a boy once who was born in the town of Springdale, Pennsylvania. He was a month old when the St. Patrick's Day flood of 1936 brought water to the streets of Pittsburgh, covering the suburban neighborhoods around the city. The river came to this boy's house. His mother lifted him high up into a dresser drawer to keep him out of the floodwaters, but the flood rushed inside their home. It came so fast that it washed the dresser away. The streets became rivers. That boy's father, Paul Shoup, was a ferryman and a gravedigger. He jumped into a rowboat and went out into the floodwaters to save his son's life. That boy who was rescued, his name was Alvin, and he was my father. During the 1936 flood, there was up to 15 feet of water in downtown Pittsburgh. Entire streets from neighboring towns disappeared that are no longer around. Since that year, the Army Corps of Engineers has constructed a system of 16 flood control reservoirs and other projects that have prevented nearly $17 billion in damages in this region. And these kids here? These are just some of my grandchildren. Today I have 5 children and 13 grandkids. Well, soon to be 14. If my father Alvin had died in that flood, I wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be here. If it weren't for these reservoirs, who knows how many more dressers might have washed away in the last 80-some years. Thanks to the Pittsburgh District, that's something we don't have to worry about so much these days. Who knows the ways of water? Well, it appears that some do.
Speaking of dams and balancing water systems, USACE's Northwestern Division in 2013 launched an online game to help people understand just how difficult it is to keep a system in balance. And now, thanks to some Texas 5th graders, that game got even better. Balancing an entire river system is a challenging task. Balancing one as large as the Missouri River with competing interests between environmental, commerce, Native American interests, and private property rights, along with swings in the amount of precipitation a river basin receives throughout the year, is almost insurmountable. To help students understand the complex nature of balancing such a large system, the Missouri River Balancing Game was developed in 2013 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Northwestern Division. The web-based game presented scenarios and allowed users to choose different courses of action. Each course of action impacted another part of the river system either positively or negatively. The River Balance game was relatively successful in teaching these concepts until December 31st, 2020, when the web plugin Flash went dead and the game went dark. After a few years of computer coding, and with the help of some Texas 5th graders, the Missouri River Balancing game is back online.
So those students were wonderful in giving us feedback. They gave us screenshots, they gave us notes, and we were able to incorporate all of that into the development process.
Just like its predecessor, the new 2022 version of the game allows players to take control of 2 dams along an interior river system. The game throws different scenarios with different temperatures and precipitation for players to mitigate the impacts of.
One of the things that I saw is that they were able to see some real-world consequences of weather, the rain, and also some real-world consequences of changing the levels in reservoirs and changing the flow of the dams.
Ultimately, the game designers hope the game doesn't just help inform students about how challenging balancing a river system is, but inspires them to look at careers in both engineering and computer science.
This product that is going to allow students and anyone else who's interested learn a little bit about the water management, the natural resources, as well as possibly computer science and engineer careers.
The game is available online at www.nwd.usace.army.mil/basin-balancer. For the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Patrick Bloodgood. That wraps up this edition of Core Connection. We look forward to being back here next month with another episode where we will once again bring you the stories from around the globe on what your U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is doing. Until then, I'm Patrick Bloodgood, and this has been Core Connection.